The rain had been falling since noon. Sarah Calloway didn't mind the rain. Rain brought customers. It drove people indoors, made them restless and anxious people always needed something from her shop. A calming tincture. A sleep blend. A small vial of tomorrow will be better, which was really just chamomile, silver moongrass, and a drop of her own particular magic stirred in. She wiped her hands on her apron and reached for the broom. The shop, a cramped, warm little place called the Thorn and Petal, smelled the way all good places should smell. Like dried lavender. Like beeswax candles. Like cinnamon bark and the faint sweetness of honey root simmering on the back burner. Pip, her fox, was curled on the counter like a small orange cloud, his tail covering his nose. Only his amber eyes tracked her movements. "We close in an hour," Sarah told him. He didn't respond. He almost never did. But his left ear twitched. The bell above the door chimed. Sarah turned, expecting a late villager. Maybe old Tibbet from the mill, coming for his weekly jointees salve. Maybe one of the shepherd girls wanting a love potion she didn't actually need. Instead, she got him. The man who stepped through the door had to turn slightly sideways to fit through the frame. He was tall in the way that ancient trees are tall, not just height, but presence. Like he had been standing since before the village existed and would be standing long after it crumbled to dust. He wore a long black riding coat, darkened further by the rain. His hair was dark and damp. His jaw was sharp and unsmiling. His eyes, when they landed on her, were the color of hammered gold, and they didn't blink. Sarah felt the shift in the air immediately. The candles nearest to him guttered. Pip's tail came off his nose and wrapped tighter around his body. The back of her neck prickled. She kept her face very still and waited. "I was told," the man said, "that this shop sells things that work." His voice was low. The kind of low that didn't come from a regular human throat. It came from somewhere older. "We do," Sarah said. She kept her tone pleasant and professional, the same way she kept it when a large and unhappy wolf came sniffing around the village during the full moon months. Calm. Unimpressed. "What do you need?" He moved to the counter. She tracked him with her peripheral vision, watching the way he moved, too smooth, too controlled, the movement of someone who had learned to contain something enormous inside a human-shaped vessel. And then the smell hit her. Sarah had a gift she had never asked for. Since childhood, she could smell what others couldn't. Emotions had scent. Fear smelled like iron and old rain. Joy smelled like fresh bread. Grief smelled like river water in winter. Curses, real, deep curses, smelled like something beautiful that had been locked in a dark room for too long. Like flowers pressed until they rotted. This man smelled like a whole graveyard of them. It wasn't offensive the way a human smell is offensive. It was deeper than that. It coated the inside of her nose and sat at the back of her throat. It tasted like ash and something electric, like the sky right before lightning found the earth. She breathed through her mouth and said, very carefully, "What's the main concern?" "Sleep," he said. "I haven't slept in a very long time." "How long?" A pause. "Long enough that I no longer remember what it felt like." She looked at him properly then. Up close, under the warm candlelight, she could see what the shadows had been hiding. The skin along his throat had the faintest dark tracery beneath it, like veins drawn in ink rather than blood. The color of him was wrong. Not sick wrong. Ancient wrong. She pointed this out the way only Sarah Calloway could. "Before I suggest anything," she said, setting her hands flat on the counter, "I should tell you that I have a very sensitive nose. It's part of how I work. And right now," she paused, choosing her words, "you have the scent of something deeply rotted. It's coming from inside you. Not your clothes, not your skin." She tilted her head. "Actually, your breath is the worst of it. It smells like an old curse that's been eating at you for a very long time." The silence that followed was enormous. It filled the entire shop. It pressed against the walls. Pip had silently relocated from the counter to behind a barrel in the corner. The man stared at her. His golden eyes did not blink. His expression did not change. And yet something shifted behind his face, like a stone moving beneath still water. "You," he said very quietly, "can smell the curse. I can smell everything, she said. And I'm telling you, respectfully, that whatever is happening inside you is very advanced and very serious. I can help with symptoms. But you need more than a sleep blend. Everyone else, he said, just as quietly, tells me I smell of rain and pine. They're either lying, Sera said, or they don't have the nose for it. You smell like a grave that hasn't given up hope yet. And, she wrinkled her nose despite herself, it is genuinely unpleasant. I'm sorry. But you deserve the truth more than a comfortable answer. He leaned forward then. Very slowly. Very deliberately. Until his face was much closer to hers than it should have been. Until she could see the gold of his eyes up close, not flat, but swirling, like something liquid and alive. You say I have bad breath, he murmured. I did, she agreed, not stepping back. Then prove it, he whispered. And then, before she could react, before Pip could shriek, before anything in the world could stop it, his mouth met hers. She expected rot. She expected the taste of everything she had smelled. Instead, she tasted dark honey. Thunder. The first rain after a drought. Raw and ancient and devastatingly alive. It lasted only a moment. He pulled back. He looked at her with something unreadable in his golden eyes. Something that might, in another man, have been wonder. My name is Dravyn, he said, straightening. Dravyn Ashveil. And I will send a carriage at first light. He turned toward the door. I haven't agreed to anything, Sera called after him, her voice impressively steady for someone whose heart was rioting. He paused at the door. You will, he said simply. The bell chimed. The cold rushed out with him. The candles steadied. Pip crawled out from behind the barrel and stared at her with enormous, reproachful eyes. Don't, Sera told him. She sat down on the floor anyway. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but somehow, it sounded different now. Like the beginning of something. The carriage arrived before dawn. Sera heard it before she saw it, the heavy, rhythmic sound of hooves on wet cobblestone, slow and deliberate, like a heartbeat that had learned patience over centuries. She was already awake. She had not slept. She had spent the hours between midnight and morning sitting at her workbench, pretending to sort herbs while actually just turning a small empty vial over and over in her fingers. Pip had watched her from the windowsill the entire time, his amber eyes half closed, his tail wrapped neatly around his paws. I'm not going, Sera told him, at roughly 3 in the morning. Pip's ear twitched. I mean it, she said, at 4. He yawned, showing small white teeth. When the knock came at the door just before sunrise, she was already wearing her traveling coat and had her satchel packed with 6 different tinctures, 2 pairs of gloves, a jar of moongrass balm, and every herb she thought might be useful against an ancient Lycan curse. She opened the door. The man standing there was not Dravyn. He was broad-shouldered, dark-skinned, and wore the expression of someone who had been doing difficult jobs for a very long time with great professionalism. He had kind eyes and a scar along his jaw that curved like a crescent moon. Miss Calloway, he said, with a small bow. I am Cassiel. I serve King Dravyn. He asked me to escort you to Stonehaven Spire. He asked, Sera repeated. Cassiel's mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile. He said escort. I am choosing to interpret that charitably on his behalf. She liked him immediately. Pip leaped from the windowsill onto her shoulder, settled there like a small warm scarf, and they walked together to the carriage. The journey to Stonehaven Spire took most of the morning. The village of Herbalist disappeared behind them within minutes, swallowed by the forest that grew thicker and older the further north they traveled. The trees here were enormous, black-barked, with silver leaves that didn't fall even in autumn, as if the seasons had made a private agreement to leave this part of the world alone. Sera pressed her face to the carriage window and watched them pass. Cassiel sat across from her, quiet and steady. How long has he been like this? She asked, not looking away from the trees. A pause. Like what, miss? Dying, she said simply. Another pause, longer this time. 217 years, Cassiel said quietly. Give or take. She turned from the window then and looked at him. His kind eyes were doing something careful, something controlled, the way eyes do when a person has learned not to let grief show too clearly on their face. You've been with him that long? She asked, Since before the curse, he said. Since he was just a young king who laughed too loudly at dinner and rode too fast through the mountain passes and drove his advisors absolutely mad. He looked at his hands. I have watched him fade by degrees for over 2 centuries. Very slowly. The way a fire doesn't go out all at once, it just gets quieter and quieter until one morning you realize it has been cold for a long time and you didn't notice the exact moment it happened. Sera sat with that for a while. Pip pressed his nose against her jaw, warm and small. He laughed too loudly, she said finally. Cassiel looked up. This time the smile reached his eyes. Terribly. It was wonderful. Stonehaven Spire was not what she expected. She had imagined something harsh and cold, all black stone and iron gates and the kind of architecture designed to make visitors feel small. And yes, it was built of dark granite, rising from the mountainside in great sweeping towers. Yes, the gates were iron, ancient and elaborate. But inside the main walls, there was a courtyard. And in the courtyard, impossibly, there were flowers. Wild ones, mostly. The kind that grew without anyone asking them to. Purple thistles pushing up between the cobblestones. Tiny white star blossoms climbing the base of the eastern wall. A single ancient rosebush, enormous, sprawling, absolutely untamed, growing against the south gate like it owned the place. Sera stopped walking and stared. He doesn't allow anyone to remove them, Cassiel said quietly beside her. They appear every spring, and he says they have more right to be here than most of his advisors. She found Dravyn in the great hall. Or rather, she found the shell of him. He was standing at the far window, looking out at the mountain, and in the pale morning light the damage was visible in a way it hadn't been the night before in her candlelit shop. The dark veins had spread since yesterday. They climbed his throat now, reaching toward his jaw. The skin around them was pale as birch bark. He was still standing straight, still dressed impeccably in dark grey and silver, but it cost him. She could see the effort in the set of his shoulders, the slight tension in his hands gripping the window ledge. You came, he said, without turning. Don't make it weird, she said, setting her satchel on the nearest table. I came because you're clearly in a serious condition and I am a professional. That's all. He turned then. The golden eyes found her face, and something in them shifted, not dramatically, not the way it happens in stories. Just a small, quiet shift, like a door that has been closed for a very long time moving a single inch. You're not afraid of me today, he observed. I was afraid of you yesterday too, she said, pulling on her gloves. I'm just better at not showing it. She pointed to the chair nearest the window. Sit down. You look like you're about to fall over and I'd rather examine you while you're upright. Saturday she worked. She examined the veins up close, tracing their pattern with gloved fingers, her nose doing most of the real work. The smell of the curse had a shape to it, a direction, a center of gravity. It was pulling inward, toward his heart, like a slow tide. It started with a wound, she said quietly. Something that didn't heal right. A blade, he said. Cursed. The warlock who wielded it was gone but not finished, she interrupted. Yes. I can smell the intention in it. It was designed to take a very long time. She sat back and looked at him. It's been patient. So have I, he said. She looked at him then. Really looked. Up close, without the rain and the drama of last night, he was just a person. Tired in a way that went so far down it had stopped looking like tiredness and started looking like gravity. Like a man who had been holding something enormous for so long that his arms no longer shook, not because he was strong, but because he had forgotten what it felt like to put it down. Why haven't you told anyone? She asked. About the veins? The smell? Any of it? He was quiet for a moment. Because a king who is dying, he said carefully, becomes something to be managed. His decisions get questioned. His authority gets tested. His enemies get brave. He looked at his hands, the dark tracery visible even there now, running along the backs of his fingers. I needed to be feared more than I needed to be helped. And now, she asked. The golden eyes came up to hers. Now, he said, very quietly, I am running out of time to choose pride over survival. It was Elder Isolde who told her the truth. The old wolf elder was waiting in the corridor when Sera came out from the examination. Isolde was ancient, truly ancient, the way Dravyn was ancient, with white hair and milky, sightless eyes that nonetheless seemed to see everything with uncomfortable precision. "You already know what it needs," Isolde said, without preamble. "Don't you, child?" Sera stopped walking. Pip pressed closer against her neck. "A true anchor," Sera said slowly. "Not a potion. Not a plant. A person. Someone whose presence silences the curse rather than suppresses it." She swallowed. "A bonded mate." Isolde nodded, unsurprised. "And if he doesn't?" "By the next full moon," Isolde said simply, "the rot reaches his heart. And then it is finished." Sera stood in the cold stone corridor of Stonehaven Spire and felt the weight of it settle onto her shoulders like snow. The full moon was 11 days away. Pip pressed his small nose into her hair and made a soft, worried sound. "All right," Sera said quietly, to no one in particular and everyone at once. "All right." She walked back toward the great hall. There was work to do. The night before the full moon, Sera couldn't sleep. She lay on the narrow guest bed in Stonehaven Spire and stared at the dark ceiling and listened to the mountain breathe. That was what it felt like. The whole fortress had a rhythm to it, deep and slow, like something enormous sleeping beneath the stone. She had been here 9 days now. 9 days of brewing, testing, adjusting. 9 days of working beside Dravyn in the conservatory he had finally unlocked for her, moving through rows of plants that had no names in any book she owned, learning their scents, their moods, their particular brands of stubbornness. 9 days of learning him, too. Without meaning to. She knew now that he took his tea without anything in it and held the cup with both hands like it was the warmest thing in the room, which it usually was. She knew he read in the early hours before dawn when the curse made sleep impossible, sitting in the window seat of the great hall with a book open on his knee and his golden eyes moving slowly across the page. She knew he visited the courtyard flowers every morning, quietly, never touching them, just standing near them the way a person stands near something they are grateful still exists. She knew the sound of his footsteps in the corridor outside her door. Steady. Careful. Always pausing for just a moment outside her room before moving on. Pip was watching her from the foot of the bed, his amber eyes glowing softly in the dark. "Don't say anything," she told him. He tilted his head. "I know what I said," she muttered, pulling the blanket tighter. "I said it was professional. I said it was just a potion. I said." Pip made a small sound that was not quite a word but communicated everything perfectly. She closed her eyes and thought about the moonroot potion sitting in the conservatory, cooling in a stone vessel. She had finished it 2 hours ago. It had taken 7 days to brew correctly moonroot and widow's willow sap and something she had eventually found pressed in the darkest corner of the grey sector, a tiny silver flower with no name that smelled, impossibly, like forgiveness. When she combined them with her own blood, not Dravyn's, not anyone else's, hers, because Elder Isolde had been right and she had known it from the first moment she understood the shape of the curse, the liquid had turned the color of a clear winter sky just after sunrise. It would work. She was certain of that. What she was less certain about was everything else. She found him in the conservatory at midnight. She hadn't planned to go there. Her feet simply carried her, down the corridor, through the hidden door that no longer rippled when she touched it. It had learned her by now, accepting her palm the way a guard dog accepts the smell of a friend, and into the warm, breathing dark of the garden. Dravyn was standing in the grey sector, near the widow's weeping willow, looking up at the pale silver light that filtered through the glass ceiling above. The full moon was enormous tonight, pressing itself against the glass like it wanted in. In its light, the black veins on his throat were visible even from a distance, and they had spread further in the last 2 days, reaching his cheekbones now, threading through the skin beneath his eye. He looked like a stained glass window in the moment before it shatters. "You should be sleeping," he said, without looking at her. "So should you," she said, coming to stand beside him. "I told you. I don't." "I know," she said. "I know you don't sleep. I know you haven't in 200 years. I know you've been holding this whole fortress and this whole kingdom and this whole impossible weight by yourself for longer than most countries have existed." She paused. "I know the potion is ready." He looked at her then. The golden eyes were dimmer than they had been 9 days ago. The curse was moving faster now. Elder Isolde had not needed to tell her that. She could smell it, the rot sharper, more insistent, like it could sense the deadline approaching and was pushing harder against whatever was left of him. You also know, he said carefully, what Isolde told you. Yes, she said. Then you know a potion alone won't hold it. His voice was very controlled. Very steady. The way voices are when a person is being ferociously careful. You know what the curse requires. A bonded mate. An anchor. Not just a hand on my chest, Remy, a real bond. The kind that doesn't come undone. My name is Sera, she said softly. He blinked. What? You called me Remy. That's not my name. My name is Sera. She looked up at him. I wanted you to know my actual name. Before. Something moved across his face. Slow and enormous, like a weather system changing. Sera, he said. And the way he said it, quiet, careful, like something he was afraid of breaking, made her chest ache. I've been thinking, she said, turning to look at the moonroot grove, about what a bond means. What it actually means. Not in the ceremonial sense. Not in the legal Lycan sense. She folded her hands in front of her. It means choosing someone. It means saying, you are the one I stop performing for. You are the one I let be tired in front of. You are the one I give the real version of myself to, even the parts that are inconvenient or strange or too loud at dinner. A silence. I've heard, she continued, that you used to laugh too loudly at dinner. Dravyn went very still. Cassiel told you, he said. Cassiel loves you, she said simply. And he's been watching you disappear for 2 centuries and he doesn't know how to say it, so he told me the thing that he thought might matter. She turned back to him. It mattered. The moonlight was very bright between them. I am not easy, he said. His voice was rougher now, the control slipping just slightly. I am old and stubborn and the curse has made me cold in ways that may not entirely reverse. I own buildings without warning people. I fill apartments with flowers as apologies instead of simply saying sorry. I throw the wrong vials at people, she said. I talk to a fox like he's a person. I tell ancient and terrifying kings that they have bad breath within 30 seconds of meeting them. She looked up at him steadily. I'm not easy either. His mouth moved. Just barely. No, he agreed. You are not easy at all. So, she said. Are we doing this? The mating ceremony happened at dawn. Elder Isolde conducted it in the courtyard, among the wildflowers. The purple thistles and the white star blossoms and the enormous, untamed rosebush were witnesses. Cassiel stood to one side, very straight, very composed, and absolutely losing the battle against his own expression. Pip sat on Sera's shoulder and behaved with uncharacteristic solemnity for approximately 4 minutes before attempting to steal a piece of Isolde's ceremonial ribbon, after which Sera hissed at him and he retreated, looking offended. It was not a grand ceremony. There were no crowds, no banners, no elaborate Lycan traditions performed in full regalia. Dravyn had offered all of that. Sera had declined. I want the real version, she had said. Not the performance. So it was small. It was honest. It was the 2 of them, standing in the early morning light with cold mountain air around them and wildflowers at their feet, saying the words that meant, I choose you. Not the idea of you. Not the useful version of you. All of you, including the rot, including the stubbornness, including the 2 centuries of loneliness you've been carrying alone. When Sera placed her hand flat against Dravyn's chest over his heart, over the dark knot of veins, and the bond completed, she felt it happen. Not violently. Not dramatically. It was like a window opening in a room that had been sealed shut for a very long time. A rush of something clean and bright moving through the space where only stillness had been. She felt his heartbeat under her palm change, from that slow, exhausted war drum to something steadier, something with more hope in it. She looked up at him. The black veins were fading. Not vanishing instantly. This was not that kind of story, the kind where love is a magic eraser and everything becomes perfect in a single moment. But fading. Pulling back, the way tide retreats from a shore, slowly and with some resistance, but retreating nonetheless. His eyes, though. His eyes went from dim gold to something blazing. Something fully alive. Like someone had taken a lantern that had been running low and quietly, carefully, refilled it. He looked at her like she was the first morning after a very long winter. "The noise," he said softly. "Sera. The noise in my head." "I know," she said. "It's gone," he whispered. Cassiel made a sound from the corner that he would later insist was a cough. It was not a cough. 3 weeks later, Marin arrived. Sera's older sister came up the mountain path with a bag over each shoulder and an expression on her face that communicated equal parts relief, fury, and intense curiosity. She stopped in the courtyard, looked at the wildflowers growing between the cobblestones, looked at the enormous untamed rosebush, looked at Sera standing in the doorway in a warm coat with Pip on her shoulder and something different in her posture, something settled, something that hadn't been there before. "You look different," Marin said. "I'm fine," Sera said. "I'm good, actually." Marin studied her for a long moment. "The rumors in the village say you bonded with the Lycan king." "The rumors in the village are accurate for once," Sera agreed. Marin set down her bags. "And he treats you well?" "He bought me a building," Sera said. "Which I'm still annoyed about. And he fills rooms with flowers instead of apologizing properly, which we're working on." She paused. "But yes. He treats me well. He's learning to say sorry with words instead of gestures. We're both learning things." Marin picked her bags back up and walked through the gate. She stopped beside Sera and looked at her one more time, close and searching the way only older sisters can look. "You're happy," she said, like she was confirming something she hadn't quite let herself believe yet. Sera thought about a man who had been cold for 2 centuries learning to sit in a patch of morning sunlight. She thought about golden eyes fully lit. She thought about the sound of someone who had forgotten how to laugh, beginning, slowly and with great unpracticed effort, to remember. "I'm happy," she said. Pip chirped softly. Inside the great hall, from somewhere deep in the fortress, came the sound of a voice, low, a little rusty, unpracticed, laughing too loudly at something Cassiel had said. "It was wonderful. Tilda and Tilda."